Welcome to NeuroNoodle's Q&A Live, a special segment brought to you by the NeuroNoodle podcast. I'm your host, Pete Jansons, and today we're sharing a live recording from a recent Q&A session where our expert panel tackled real-time questions from our audience on neurofeedback, brain health, and mental well-being. At NeuroNoodle Q&A Live, you drive the content. You ask, we answer. Our expert panel includes Jay Gunkelman, neurofeedback legend with over 500,000 brain scans analyzed, Dr. Marie Swingle, author of iMinds and a leading expert in neuroscience and psychology, Joy Lunt, neurofeedback specialist focusing on autism and sensory processing disorders, John Mekrut, advocate for neurofeedback, particularly in PTSD and mental health, Dr. Andrew Hill, founder of Peak Brain Institute, Santiago Brand, international leader in biofeedback and neurofeedback, and of course Anthony Ramos, neurofeedback practitioner and mental health advocate. If you'd like to be part of the conversation and drive the next session's content, join us live every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Time on the NeuroNoodle YouTube channel. It's your chance to get direct answers from the experts, just like in the recording. Disclaimer, the content provided in this Q&A is for informational entertainment purposes only. Always consult with your primary care physician or a qualified healthcare provider before making any decisions related to your health. Now let's dive into NeuroNoodle Q&A Live. Sit back, listen, and learn. Anthony Ramos.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm on the road, my friend. I'm in God's country, Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri.
Oh, interesting. Is that a family background there? Or?
Yes. One of my favorite uncles, Mike Sanahan, and my favorite aunt, Jan Sanahan. We're here at their property or estate, Beautiful. And we're having a great time. Let me know if the sound is bad or whatever. We got speakers playing music. Yeah. So
I can hear the game behind you. I don't know if that's you're at a sports bar or what.
Well, no, we're going to have music. I'm sure we're going to get demonetized in like 5 minutes from YouTube because AC/DC will be coming on, but God bless. But what's been going on lately in your 12,000 member chat room on mental health, technology, mental health?
There was a big one I wanted to, I hope somebody addresses today, which is Ozempic is cutting addiction in opioid addicts, addiction sufferers by 40%. In a Penn State study. And so, I would love to know, what is it doing to the EEG or to the brain? So we'll just
hold on. Isn't it the anterior cingulate switch? It's, because it's not only drugs, liquor, whatever, but it's gambling, any of your vices. It seems to turn it off. Yes or no?
Exactly. Yeah. I read something that it's increasing theta waves specifically, but I couldn't tell you for sure because it was at the temporal lobe. So that's pretty good that you remember that, because the anterior cingulate, as you mentioned, that's one of Jay's two main places for addiction. That's one of the two main phenotypes, is having alpha, theta, or beta up there, or then having over arousal, the low voltage fast EEG. As Jay, I hope I got it right. So until he's on.
Oh, don't worry, he'll come on in a little bit. We can get away with a lot of things right now until those people start showing up. Did you see in the news the Weatherman that had a panic attack?
Lots more rain in the days ahead. I'm actually going to need to stop for a second. Some of you may know that I occasionally get affected by some panic attacks, and actually that's happening right now. Lisa, maybe I could hand back to you.
While on air for Australian Broadcasting Corporation's show News Breakfast, weather presenter Nate Byrne experienced a panic attack. Byrne's colleagues stepped in while he took some time to recover before rejoining the broadcast.
Sorry if I gave anybody a bit of a scare there.
Yes, not really, because you've been very honest before about getting panic attacks on air, and it's so great for people to know that it can happen to anyone.
You gave me a scare because I thought I'd have to finish doing the weather report, and I'm no good at that.
It's not the first time Byrne has had an attack on air.
For Adelaide, it's a fine day, staying pretty warm as well, getting to 20, while in the west, it's looking pretty fine for the most part.
Byrne wrote about his experience with panic attacks and how he has learned to manage them. Making sure your support network knows that you sometimes need assistance and how they can support you is essential, Byrne wrote. It's not always obvious what's going on from the outside. I looked far more in control than I was feeling.
Yeah, Jay, I think he addressed it one time, but that's always a good one.
Oh, here comes Joy. She's
awesome.
She's figuring it out. There we go. Come on, Joy.
Oh.
Hello.
There we go.
Finally, we got some cred, street cred.
Hey, Joy.
It's the street cred, all right. Crud, whatever. Yeah.
Wow.
All right. All right. Juan is in the. This is like our pregame. It doesn't start till 6. We get on early. I don't know. We got about a dozen. That's about our average the last month or so. We got about a dozen in the in the room, right, Tony? And Juan says he's been doing neurofeedback for 24 years. 24 years. That would be like 1999, 2000.
That's great.
Juan, yeah. Do you have any questions for Joy, not for Tony or Pete? Joy, did you see that the Weatherman had a panic attack on the air?
No, but I could have helped him.
Do a quick Google search before the show starts. I made a joke to Antonio, and
Hadn't heard it. Yeah.
I said that he got the report wrong.
What? He wasn't here during the middle of the earthquake we had yesterday, was he?
Wait, what? Earthquake?
Oh, we had a good one.
In Cali?
Yeah.
It was Kamala's fault.
It happened from about 15 miles away from me. It was impressive.
Joy, where are you at? Are you San Fran or LA?
LA.
LA, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So that means John Mekrut might have issues. Did it affect anything or?
No, thank goodness. It didn't seem to have done any financial damage to anything, nothing. But I'll tell you what, I sat down and I hung on to the piece of furniture next to me. It was, I want to say maybe a 4.7 or something, which, you know, we get them all the time around here, and they're a little bit of a, oh, was that something? But this was like,
yeah.
This one I heard. It's the strangest thing. Every once in a while, they're big enough, and you can hear this boom, and then all of a sudden, everything starts shaking. And my gauge is like, how long did this last? And this was long enough for me to go, I wonder if I should move someplace else. You know, it was impressive. It was a good one.
Okay, Juan, what kind of, I brought up panic attacks. What is, let's see. Depends on the topic, propose a topic, and I'll ask. All right, Joshua Moore, welcome to the show, my friend.
Glad to be here. How's it going?
Oh, good. We got Juan Diaz in the green room. He's asking. Well, he's been doing neurofeedback for 24 years. That's a long time, and
yeah, great.
He's. We should invite him on the show.
Yeah,
next
he's in the wrong group. Send him over. Yeah.
Hey, Juan.
Where is Juan located?
Yeah, Juan.
He wants us to suggest a topic. Maybe we should ask him a question.
Yeah, I got questions for Juan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
I threw out panic attacks. So
yes.
All right, East Bay, close to San Fran. Okay, Juan, gotcha. Juan, what can we ask you about panic attacks? What's coming in the last 6 months with your clients? All right, he says that's a tricky one. Yeah, go ahead, Joy. Read it off.
Yeah.
I would offer panic attacks they're some of my favorites.
Yeah.
I can, if you are predisposed to them, I can make you have a panic attack in my chair.
Mm-hmm.
That's definite. But in the last 6 months, one of my people came in who is a developmental trauma, serious trauma situation that we've been working with for almost a year. And he came in the middle of having a panic attack. And he told me, he said, I was about halfway here when I started this, and I didn't know if I should go home or if I should just keep driving. And he said, I knew if I went home, I would just be stuck with this. So what are we going to do? And I said, sit down, just sit down. You know, normally we have a chat before our session so I can kind of catch up and see what's going on. But I said, sit down in the chair. And, you know, the reality is that in a panic attack, the last thing you need to do is be calmed down. A panic attack is one of the classic demonstrations of losing complete control.
Mm-hmm.
And if I take your frequencies down, I can help you lose more control. So my rule about panic attacks is I'll work at C4. So I'm in the right hemisphere, very simple placement. And I usually bring the reward frequency at about 12.5 to 15.5 hertz. And it took me 9 minutes to turn his panic attack off completely. That's pretty typical.
So if you got a mom that just tuned in, and look, any mom can have a panic attack when, oh my God, I got the kid, I got 6 kids, I got to get dinner on the stove, I just got home from work. Is that the amygdala firing up? And how does Lexapro play a role in it, and Xanax versus doing the neurofeedback? I'll hang up and listen for my answer. Thank you.
Wow. Okay. That's a giant question.
Mhm.
When you take the Lexapro and or the Xanax, you are chemically treating your entire brain.
Mhm.
Nobody escapes being affected by that. Your entire brain is involved in that. I think that, yes, a panic attack is probably a good example of the amygdala having sent off the emergency signals. You know, the fire alarms are going off really strong. And when that happens, you have a chemical response that you can't stop. And you release cortisol and adrenaline, and all the negative stress hormones get automatically released. And I think a panic attack is probably like the far end of that happening. Because when you are under the control of those chemicals, you just don't have any control. You have none. And, you know, we were equipped with that so you could run away from a saber-toothed tiger. Well, most of us don't run into those anymore. And you were intended to gain the benefits that all those chemicals would do to you. Namely, they reroute all of your circulatory system into your muscles. You can run faster, you breathe faster, you oxygenate your system better, and you run to save your life. In our world today, though, most of the time we don't run. We sit and we stew in these chemicals that we have leashed on ourselves. And so you end up with a panic attack. So, yeah. And you're right. They're really common.
Well, I figured out how to get the guests chats up here. So Juan here's what he has. Hey, welcome, John Mekrut. Thank you for joining us. We have Juan Diaz in the chat room, who we got to bring on the show at
Joy, I
another
thought we had
time.
an efficacy rating for panic disorder, but I couldn't find it in here. Am I wrong?
I don't know. I haven't looked in that one.
Okay, I thought it did have a panic disorder efficacy rating, but I couldn't find it, so maybe we do not.
I don't know. The Joy Lunt School says it's a highly effective.
Yeah, so that's what I thought. Maybe it was just like, maybe it was just in my own brain. Panic
So
disorders are
how does insurance pay for it on a DSM-5?
We don't. Okay, can I? I'm sorry. This is my soapbox. This is my soapbox. John's laughing. He's
You go, girl. You go, girl.
Okay. The field of neurofeedback has been negligent and ignorant and neglectful of taking care of this. In 1998, a gentleman, Bob Whitehouse, went to the CPT, the AMA CPT code editorial panel, which is where CPT codes are born.
Mm-hmm.
In order to get an insurance company to acknowledge anything, and I'm talking if you go to the doctor and have a sinus infection, you have to have a diagnosis and you have to have a CPT code, which says, what are we going to do for you about this diagnosis? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What is it, Joy? What is the CPT code? What does CPT stand for? A lot of people listening may not know.
I don't know.
Something... I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I think it's procedure. I think it's code for procedural treatment, something like that. It's an acronym.
Right. It refers to the treatment you're going to receive.
Right.
Right. And there's a book for that too. So we ask about the DSM-5. That currently is the book that contains all of the recognized by, the medical world
current procedural
diagnosis for mental health issues. There is another book, the ICD-10 book, for all of the physical medical world to use. So it depends on whether your diagnosis fits in the mental health world or the physical model. Okay. And then the CPT codes are supposed to be in line with those things. The last CPT code that we had approved was in 1998. No one, and I mean not one other discipline of any kind of care that would deliver any kind of treatment, has a CPT code that looks as antiquated as ours. It was our neglect that took care of that. When I was asked to go to this meeting in 2015 and offer to put new codes on the line, we were told that we were at a meeting quite by accident where one of the agenda items was to wipe our 90901, 90875, and 90876, which are the CPT codes that currently exist. They were going to wipe them off the board because nobody had asked any questions. Nobody had made them current. Nobody had paid any attention to them. We were supposed to be going to these meetings every couple of years to stay in touch and stay up to date. We didn't do it. So nobody between 1998 and 2015 bothered with these things. They just complained, oh, insurance, insurance, insurance. Okay. I have been working on this for the last 8-9 years. This has come to a halt. But what you are asking is this, and I think the problem with a lot of people is that they don't understand the system. An insurance company must have a CPT code. Okay, you can't just go to them and say, well, I had this done. No, it has to have a code, or they don't have to recognize it at all. No, it's our fault. We could have these codes. We could have them. It's a lot of work. It's not impossible. So I'm going to suggest that everyone here who belongs to any of the professional organizations, ISNR or AAPB or BCIA, should send an email to their respective executive directors and go, I am mad. I'm angry at you as an institution because you have not been taking care of us providers as needed.
Can I poke the bear a little bit?
Please do.
Could you speak to a little bit about why, when our CPT codes are used or accepted, why the reimbursement rate is so low?
That's another thing that's completely our fault. In 1998, when we received approval for the first codes, the next step, which you must go to, is called the RUC, R-U-C, and don't ask me what those stand for, but basically, this is the meeting that says, oh, congratulations, you have a code. Now come to our meeting, we're going to tell you how much that code is worth. We never went. And so now that suggestion from that group goes to the insurance world and says, we think you should pay this much. That was never done. Why was it not done? Because the gentleman who spent years putting together the work that was necessary to get the CPT code went back to his organization and said, whoa, I've done this work. Somebody else needs to pick up this project and take care of that next step. And they all went, oh, I'm sure somebody else will take care of it. That's why, because the insurance companies have been left to their own devices to decide whether they're going to pay 79 cents or $2.16. It's why you see this huge variety in reimbursement rates. You know, some of my people get $16 back and some people get, 80% of the charge.
We got Juan in the room, and hello to Craig Walker. Hey, thanks for coming back, Craig. A mom has got a kid, 5 years old, coming in on the spectrum, whatever. That could mean anything. What do they have to go through to get paid for getting service?
They might not. I mean, there's a very good chance that they won't. I hate to deliver that news, but it will depend on your individual insurance company and whether your policy will be kind enough to cover it. And you will have to have a solid diagnosis code from a doctor. And then your provider must use the CPT codes, and they have to be qualified to use the CPT codes, which means they have to have a license in order to submit to the insurance company.
What's the best insurance company out there? Subjective question, subjective answer.
Different in states.
There used to be different answers to that, Pete. Right now, your insurance company, whatever it is, can have 85 different plans. It depends on what your plan is. So there are no more great, best, wonderful, bad. There are some states where Medicaid has agreed to pay for this, but you have to do some research and find out if that's true for you. Medicare does not pay for it under any circumstances yet. That's another something that we could hammer out if we got our butts over.
Wait, hold on. You can't get brain brightening?
No, not if you expect Medicare to pay for it. Of course you can go have it, but Medicare doesn't cover it.
All right.
Pete is in stunned silence. Like,
well, I'm trying to keep up with Craig and Juan.
No.
Antonio, help me out here.
No, but again, from an insurance perspective, looking at older Americans, which is what Medicare is designed for, you'd think that would be low-hanging fruit. Brain brightening. We're not asking about trying to, address panic attacks or panic disorder. Just simple brain brightening. You think that would be an easy thing to do? Medi-Cal, nope. Private insurance, nope.
John, okay.
Yes, dear.
So it's not an easy thing because
no. I'm not minimizing the effort. I hear you.
I will tell you a little of inside information. It's not stock trading, so we're legal. During one of these meetings, we had a lovely conversation with the woman who's a representative, big time important lady from Medicare. And she said, one of the problems that we have with you guys, meaning neurofeedback, is that none of our people worry about ADD. If you would just come up with some studies showing that it helps situations that are age appropriate for the people who we cover, we want to talk to you.
Yeah, didn't we do this last week, Joy? Who's going to pay for the study on brain brightening for seniors? Who will pay for that?
I feel like my life is it's on a loop.
No, it is. It's a round robin. We're not going to pay for it until we have the studies, and nobody's going to pay for the studies. So here we sit.
You got it.
Hi, Jay. Aren't you glad you showed up for the insurance part of the conversation?
It's a great topic.
Craig has said no to Medi-Cal, no That's not true, Craig. Actually, you're going to find that in different states and in different plans, in different private insurance, they do pay for it. I would say that maybe right now about 15% of the clients I'm currently seeing are getting reimbursed some amount from their insurance companies.
Yeah, I just had one serendipitously out of the blue. I mean, I've been doing this almost 20 years. I think I know I can count on one hand anybody who's gotten a check. I got a gentleman that we've been working with out of network, submitted relentlessly. He had multiple submissions, finally got the CPT codes right. He got a check from Blue Shield for a reasonable amount of reimbursement, all things considered. I was shocked.
All right, this is my Uncle Mike. Say hi to everybody. Uncle Jay.
Hey, Uncle Mike.
Hi, guys. And lady.
That's Joy.
That's Joy.
We're in God's country, Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri. And instead of taking a week off from the show, I said, no, I will do it in my uncle's backyard. So here he is.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
We're in Trump country.
Well, we're going to get to the politics part of things. But Jay, you're well, my good friend John Mekrut here, he will disagree with that, and we'll talk about that later.
Hey, the right to disagree is perfect.
I don't know if you caught that.
He may disagree. I'm the one who's disagreeable, So.
Oh, okay. Well, we have family members that are in the room. We wanted to wave hi. All right.
Okay, I'm out.
Thank
you. Take care.
All right, John.
Thanks for giving us the space. So, I don't have difficulty with reimbursement because I don't do therapy. I do assessment, and EEG has procedure codes, and QEG isn't called QEG. It's called digital analysis of the EEG, and there's procedure codes for that. There's a procedure code for the professional reading the EEG, and there's a professional reading the digital analysis. So there are 4 codes, and I don't even know the codes, but we don't have trouble getting paid. But, you've got to have a proper physician doing the interpretation, all of that. You have to meet the standards. So
we've been working with Kaiser Permanente in our area with lots of success. They want to build a long-term program for us and for local clinics. And we've passed phase 1, and phase 2 incorporates a more standard contract for local Northwest clinics. And so supposedly phase 2 will occur soon. And phase 3, they're putting it in their actual Kaiser clinics. So I've talked to the higher up admins about that individually, and that's their actual plan at this point.
Yeah. Historically, Kaiser San Francisco had neurofeedback, biofeedback, but
Awesome.
the professional who was doing that retired, and I think it went away. So.
Great question, Elizabeth.
Is that Elizabeth Taylor? No, Tudor.
Close.
I can read this
Hey,
one
Elizabeth,
for you.
thanks for showing up. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, it says, hello, folks. Is there anyone that neurofeedback is not suited for? What type of person should be careful before beginning treatment?
Can I start with training before, rather just to switch the words around? That's
By all means.
That's my soapbox, Joey. I'll stand on it forever.
I'm right with you, John.
Yeah,
right
Elizabeth, just to know, the way many of us in this community view it is it's not a treatment, it's a training. We're not doing anything to a person's brain in neurofeedback term. There's neurostimulation, whole different conversation. But for plain neurofeedback, traditional neurofeedback, whatever you want to call it, it's, in my view, a training. So we want to be mindful of that. We're not just being particular about using a particular word. I think it speaks to the heart of what it is that we do. Yay, John, training. Thanks, Craig. But is there
optimization.
Jay, this is a great question. You, as an EEG expert, in other words, is there something in an EEG reading that would say, hey, this person probably should be cautious, perhaps, about approaching doing neurofeedback training?
There's things that tell me that the therapist should be cautious. But basically, if you find something in the EEG, you can train it. I mean, the EEG is an organ that can be trained. You can operantly control its function. And if you see epileptiform content, that can be trained away. We've done that successfully. I have a 6 in a row seizure-free, medication-free at this point, and we just published on the Isabella case. She's seizure-free, medication-free for 7 years, graduated with honors and a tennis scholarship from Baylor, and is in grad school there. She's got 1 year left of eligibility for tennis, and she'll graduate with a master's degree and go pro. So I think that was a positive outcome with somebody who had epileptiform content and was told the only chance for her was brain surgery. The meds weren't working. She was an intractable epileptic. So, when I see a difficult to train brain that's going to be difficult, it's going to take a long time, it's something that the therapist needs to be aware of. But if the person coming in and realizes what's going on with their brain and realizes kind of what the training is going to take, and that it's not a not a linear progressive recovery from something, it's a learning, and there's a learning curve. The learning curve has a fifth order learning curve for those who are into physics on learning curves, but it's something that you can learn to control. So there's nothing that I've seen in a brain that would tell me that the person shouldn't try to control it, but we do see things that are hard to control. And the therapist needs to be experienced enough and realize what it is that's going to be entailed in the training. This is not a simple ADD, if there's any such thing, that would be maybe 30, 40 sessions and be effectively trained so that they're not diagnosable anymore. That works very nicely. That's been shown to have good efficacy. In fact, compared to medications, there's some meta-analyses that gave it a specific, meaning that it's better than other approaches, including medication. So, it's not that quick and easy when you've got very difficult things like epileptiform discharges, which can be seen in non-epileptics. We've shown in a group of psychiatric patients that had no history of seizure that epileptiform content can be identified. And when you see it and you treat it with an anticonvulsant, even though neurology would typically not treat it with an anticonvulsant because there's no seizure, in psychiatry, they can use an anticonvulsant as a stabilizing agent. And when treated, the individual psychiatry gets better. And if you look at the EEG, you can tell whether it's a problem or not and know whether that's an appropriate med. I just finished doing a talk on medication selection based on EEG, QEEG for ADD. And it's not all about simple stimulants. There's a lot of different kinds of drugs that are being used. So
that was a terrific presentation, Jay. Thank you for giving up your time on that.
Well, thanks for attending. I found out that Linda Thompson was in the audience because of a question, and then at the end pop up all the faces I see.
Where was this presentation? Where was it televised or etc.?
It's a secret, Tony. We don't. Sorry. No.
Yeah. It was
a secret cabal.
You would register for it through iSync, which set up a difficult circumstance with a translator, and there's on the bottom on Zoom, there's a translate thing you can click, and you could get Portuguese. So there was a Portuguese translator, English to Portuguese for the entire talk. And I didn't slow down for her. She is really good. So,
Joy, when you
I wanted to just finish up with Elizabeth. Make sure she got her question answered properly.
Well,
I think inherent in the question is there some, if Elizabeth, is what you're asking, is there some diagnosable condition? You know, in other words, a person with bipolar disorder or a borderline personality disorder, schizophrenia, is there something that you might think as a population or a particular person might not do well with neurofeedback? I think all of us would probably say that no, that's not a problem for us to deal with. These diagnostic conditions are part of our work. So from Jay is speaking to brain circuit behaviors as being amenable to training.
If the person has a fatal disease of the brain, they may want to optimize the brain function in the last go around. And that's a perfectly appropriate use of the training. End stage EEG training ends up being a valid use of it as well. If you want to optimize the brain, neurofeedback is really one of the best training techniques. And it's good for what ails you if you can see it in the EEG. And there aren't contraindications, kind of like a normal contraindication for a specific medication or a specific treatment. There are, in fact, for instance, if you're going to go to a ketamine clinic, there are EEG patterns that are warnings that if you take a hallucinogen for therapy, you have a high probability of having actually a bad outcome. And those are unexpected epileptiform content and spindling excess beta. Both of them are probably on the epilepsy spectrum. But if you have those, you should be warned ahead of time that ketamine or psilocybin or I mean, there's a whole list of various things you could potentially take. They have a risk of a K-hole experience from ketamine or a bad trip from one of the other hallucinogens. So there are treatments.
Sorry, Jay, that's a warning that should go out to the psychedelic assisted therapy community at writ large. Personal revelation, I've done my fair share of psychedelics. So all I was asked was, am I taking an MAOI inhibitor? Maybe they should have looked at my QEEG before they agreed to let me into their little party. So that's a really important point. Thank you for bringing that up, Jay.
I'm going to bring up
John,
another quick point. I'm going to bring another.
Go ahead, Joy.
Because Elizabeth asked a really broad question. And, okay, Jay, you would not have done well having neurofeedback with your tumor. One of the things you must be able to sort out is this a physical problem that's causing the difficulties with the EEG pattern? And if that's the case, no, neurofeedback is not indicated for you. However, answer, Elizabeth, well,
optimizing my brain, even though I had the brain tumor, is still a perfectly good thing to do. And I've done a lot of brain training over the 52 years I've been in the field. So, and I did some prior to the brain surgery. I actually did alpha theta training to prepare myself for the for the experience of the therapy, to surrender to the surgery, and to get a set for the recovery and all of that. And I came awake, alert, and passed all my neural signs on my way to the recovery room. They've wheeled me through the recovery room to my own private room without stopping in the recovery room. I'd already popped up like toast. So I think the alpha theta training did its job. But just because I had a brain tumor doesn't mean I have to avoid neurofeedback. It means that whoever is going to be working with me needs to know what they're doing and needs to know my brain before they jump in.
So Elizabeth asked another question about standardization. I believe what Elizabeth is asking is like, if there's standards for someone in working with other disciplines. To the best of my knowledge, we have absolutely none. We can talk one provider to the next to give you some suggestions about the experiences we've had with different kind of disciplines and working with them, but there are no standards established, Elizabeth, none.
Craig has a question here referring to the sedation mention that Jay just made, I think. Says, in brief response to question posed to me recently, neurofeedback, what is neurofeedback's efficacy in easing after effects to intense sedation, such as in a tough dental procedure? Essentially, what sedatives are inhibiting neural activity? Is training less effective in this instance, and time is needed to clear sedatives out of the system? Any thoughts? There we go.
I don't know anybody doing neurofeedback when somebody's in a dentist chair personally. There are people that do hypnosis for pain control and that sort of a thing that can be done prior to a procedure, but it's not like neurofeedback is going to be being done while you're being drilled or sedated in the dentist's office. So
Jay, he may be asking about post sedation. Is there the half-life of sedatives, et cetera? Is there some period of time someone should wait before they resume training, let's say?
You can expect to have a recovery time. There's half-lives, but they're usually fairly short for things that are going to knock you out. The problem is you may have brain fog from being in surgery. Not everybody comes out from surgery with a clear head. If you come out with brain fog, that's actually an ischemic cerebrovascular finding, and we can train that so that you actually recover from the brain fog. Yes. That same brain fog can come from long hauler COVID, post-concussion brain fog. I mean, lots of things can give you a foggy brain function, and the ability to recover from that is enhanced by training.
Yeah. So in other words, if you're still feeling brain fog after you've had major surgery of any sort, it would be a positive thing to go seek out some more training to alleviate that brain fog.
Yeah, at least take a look at what your EEG is doing so that the person who's going to be doing the training has an idea where you're tuned. Ischemia is associated with brain fog, and it's the slow edge of alpha. But alpha in neurology isn't the BCI answer of 8 to 12 hertz. It's the frequency at the back of your head that attenuates when you open the eyes, and it can be slowed and outside the 8 to 12 answer, but the slow edge of alpha is what tracks ischemia. If your brain dominant alpha as at 13, which mine was historically when I was young, it's slowed down to about a 12 now, but some will think that that's my emotional age, probably okay too, but the slow edge for somebody who's got really fast alpha may be 9 or 10, but it'll stand out from the rest of their alpha, and it's the spot that needs to be tuned back up. So.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of experience with dental work, Craig, but I do have a significant amount of experience with post-surgery. The two most likely things that people just come in off the street for with brain fog is either post-surgical or chemotherapy. Post-surgical, I would first of all, it's not a long-term kind of a training process. And my guess is the level of sedation in dental work is probably not as intense as a 5-hour hip replacement surgery. It works really well. People feel it right away. Peter talked about earlier about the brain brightening. Well, this is our version of brain brightening after your, if you know anything about anesthesia, you know that their goal is to indeed induce the changes in your EEG that the dominant waves are now the slow waves, right? That's what puts you under. And so human beings have different abilities to pop back up from that. Jay, he demonstrates the fine end of like how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to have that sedation and pop back up. Not everybody does. And, I've had people come to me 6 or 8 weeks after their surgery when, of course, they've been assured that the anesthetic is off. It's gone through their system. Well, apparently their brain didn't the message, and they still have dominant slow waves. And you do a few sessions where you're inhibiting those, and they feel much better. They feel like, oh, my brain just turned back on again. So post sedation, we've had really good results.
Jay, we got a question from Juan. Hold on, Jay. This is something we haven't talked about in a long time. That's why I'm breaking in like a breaking news alert. Juan Diaz, I remember talking to Margaret Ayers back in the day and how she helped people in a coma that's beyond sedated. Jay, you are in the business of getting people out of a coma. It's not a pretty business. I think everybody should know that there is a way to go ahead.
I was in it, but I won't do it anymore because you can't predict who really wants it. A third of the people we brought back, and we woke up 27 of 33 that had been in a coma over a year with no response. They had a Glasgow coma scale of 8, basically, which is no response to anything. And so pain, there's no response. We woke them up. The process is ugly. There was only one hospital in the U.S. that would give it an IRB ethical pass. You can't get who's going to sign the permission form? The patient's in a coma. Here, sign here. We'll wake up your grandma. That's coercive. That's not informed consent. That's a coercive consent. So there's no way to get informed consent. But we woke them up effectively, 27 of 33. A third of them would have preferred just passing. Mm-hmm. And you can't predict ahead of time by looking at them. People that came, these were military soldiers who had been put into a coma during their service. So head injuries, blast injuries, hypoxia, various sorts. But they were in a coma. One guy had no left hemisphere. We woke him up too. But a third of them were unhappy with the outcome. They would have preferred passing. The fellow with no left hemisphere, we didn't judge his emotional response to it because he didn't have frontal balance. He was happy as a lark about it, but was he happy because of the pathology of missing his left hemisphere or not? We didn't judge his, but the rest of them were intact enough to answer. And you couldn't look, he's missing an arm and a leg and he's going to be upset. No, he's happy to be back and he's in therapy now. One guy only lost IQ points. He was really, really quite bright and he came back normal. And he attempted suicide multiple times, really disappointed with the outcome. His image of who he was no longer a bright guy. He thought he felt dumb and he didn't want to be. So, but you can't tell ahead of time. And when a third of your customers will spit on the ground when you walk by, you choose to do something else with your time. So we proved it could be done. It's an ugly process. You give agonists for excitatory neurochemistry. You give blocking agents for opioids, so they feel pain if they're in pain. You block GABA, you get the brain super excitable with neurochemistry, and then you strap on the neurostimulators on the hands and feet. It's a very ugly process. They pull the curtain around. Nobody in the hospital staff ever saw it. The person looks like they're having a convulsion on the table because of the stimulation going into both hands and both feet. Normally, you put a little stimulator and you stimulate the median nerve and you get a little thumb twitch. If you turn it up, you get the hand to go, and if you really turn it up, you get the whole arm to twitch. Well, we got both arms going and both legs going, and the stimulation patterns are not predictable. They're random timing, and so you can't like brace for it. And you get a 40% increase in the metabolic function of the brain with that stimulation. A lot of people wake up during that screaming and yelling in pain, and they don't remember that quite as much right after that. I mean, they're helped with their pain and so forth once they're back, but it's an ugly process. And
Jay,
between it's torturing a person awake. And it's
this is Dr. Mengele resonating in my brain here. It just sounds horrifying.
But there was only one hospital that would even allow it to be tried.
I can
We
see
showed
why.
it could work.
Well, the whole
Now-
process is horrible. I mean, I was
You know-
a frontline medical receiver at Walter Reed, and so I know the world that Jay's describing. This is what I did for a while, and the whole thing's horrible, even when they don't have a coma. You know, the average patient that we received from the airport was, you know, a double amputee or worse, and we would do the immediate medical care and triage, and then we would treat them all the way to where they would go to the Wounded Warrior Ward, do all the skin grafts, and then eventually discharge to assisted living, and that was my job. And it's crazy work. And the reason why I'm actually in this field is because I got told over and over and over again to people who had more than one missing limb, I would give the rest of my limbs if I could get my head on straight. And they were referring to either the PTSD or the TBI. I would give the rest of my limbs, like I would go completely non-ambulatory if you could just get my head on straight. I care more about my head than I do my limbs. Because we can get them walking, you know, unimaginably well, but they wanted their head on straight more than anything.
Yeah, that's not surprising when you think about, you know, it's like what I give up in my life. You know, if I can have my brain, I'm fine. You know, I would make the same choice. I'd give up my control over my body to have my brain functioning well.
Might end up like me, nothing right with my left brain and nothing left in my right brain, you know, so.
Well, it is really rewarding now because I do work with a lot of cases with TBIs, and we do see their function increase, even though they're 10 plus years after the injury. We do see people walk again who weren't walking. We do see people talk clearly who weren't talking clearly before. And that's incredibly rewarding, knowing that there is something more than 10 years after the injury where there shouldn't be, but there is. And there's significant, alarmingly better gains that can be had. And that's exciting. And I'm glad I changed jobs. It's fun.
Wow. Jay, before you got here, we were talking about panic attacks, and there in the news, you'll see a weatherman who had a panic attack on air, and somebody said, "What happened?" Well, they got the weather wrong. What is going on with a panic attack?
So in anxiety, there's only a 12% incidence of epileptiform content in anxiety. But if you have panic, the incidence of epileptiform content goes up to 30%. So about a third of the people that have panic actually have discharges in the brain, and they have out of control emotion, pseudobulbar affect. And you can have a rage event, you can have a fit of crying, a fit of laughter, a panic attack. Discharges in the temporal lobe can create all sorts of false emotion. And, you know, it's a discharge. It's not what you would normally do. It's essentially out of your control when it's happening. And not everybody that has a panic attack has epileptiform content, but it's a third. I mean, if that's awfully high odds, you know. It's not even odds, but then even odds is an odd. I mean, a strange phrase if there ever was one.
We were talking earlier about how, you know, some of us have the experience of finding panic disorders to be fairly easy to train. I'm wondering if you have some insight into that. So some things can be harder to train. Things that are related to epileptic content or undiagnosed epileptic discharges can be harder to train, but panic disorders, for some reason, seem to respond more readily than other symptoms.
A fair number of them that don't have discharges have a over-arousal. And he may be a fine weatherman operating at his peak, but when something stressed him, he plummeted. And if you're over-aroused, your arousal performance falls off. And if you drop the arousal back down, their ability to perform without having an anxiety or panic attack will probably be put back in place. Arousal can be seen peripherally. Peripheral to who? It's still part of the same person. As electrodermal activity, your sympathetic nervous system, which is part of your involuntary or autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system controls eccrine sweat glands. Your face, your hands, your feet. These are different than perspiration from heat in your armpits and chest and back. I mean, this is emotional sweat. And the sweat gland actually has a small muscle fiber in it, myoepithelial cell, that will squirt out when the sympathetic nervous system triggers it. So the hands and feet and face can end up with anxiety-related perspiration. When you see over-arousal in the sympathetic nervous system, you see that. And that'll be seen as a change in the electrical conductivity. So you can train that to drop the arousal level, electrodermal or thermal for sympathetic control. HRV balances sympathetic parasympathetic balance, heart rate variability training, which is pattern breathing, and there's a reasonable literature for that reducing sympathetic over-arousal. But you can also train in the brain. Over-arousal has beta excess, and it also has fast alpha. And you can train the alpha down, unlike brain brightening, where you want to speed it up. If your brain is too fast, you want to normalize it back down to a better frequency range. It's not like you're taking away the fast frequencies, you're training them how to make some of the slow ones. And for some people, the alpha theta style training ends up giving them those slower frequencies and gets them away from their PTSD and anxiety. And that's also very useful. So anxiety and PTSD and anxiety with panic are things that people work with in neurofeedback all the time. It's a common symptom, and it's worked with quite effectively.
No, I was going to say, for the average person just listening to this stuff gets highly technical for perhaps somebody just tuning in going, what are these people talking about? You know, Jay is, I think, very eloquent on how he explains the mechanisms involved here. But I think I want to make sure that potential clients or people looking at potentially doing neurofeedback understand that a lot of the issues that people walk into us with are characterized by them as being some kind of a character flaw. There's something wrong with me. I can't control my emotions. And that there's a huge brain circuit component to this. It's not your responsibility. You don't have control over it. That's the point. And by doing neurofeedback brain training, you can give your brain the capacity to better manage itself, and therefore you won't have those feelings. You won't feel wildly out of control or standing in front of the green screen doing the weather report and completely collapse. Your arousal will be reduced to the point where the brain itself is better managed. So I just want to make sure people don't mistake this for some, as they often do, there's something wrong with me. I got a diagnosis of X, Y, or Z. There must be something wrong with me. And it's brain circuits. It's problems managing states. And once the training takes effect, you're going to feel better. And we just want to make sure that, I want to make sure that people aren't mistaking this for some kind of a psychological trick that we're playing on them. It's not that. It's literally brain circuits. Sorry, Anthony, I stepped on you.
No, it's fine. I was just going to read speaking of training, somebody is asking about how do they enhance their neurofeedback training at home. It's Talabo. And he says, are there any devices to use or rent to support or maintain progress between sessions or after it ends?
Having spoken with this lady, I'd like to answer her question.
Sure.
No. And this is coming from a provider, okay? There may be other opinions about the home training market, stuff like that. Okay. The problem that I have with it as a provider is I am very carefully and deliberately choosing a protocol for you. That is the one that your brain needs to learn from. It's sort of like saying, you know, I'm taking my dog to a very expensive dog trainer. Can I go to some cheaper people who I really don't know what they do and if they might be the same? Would that be helpful to the training? So my answer to this question is, while you are working with someone, you need to do sessions frequently enough that you are not losing the gains from one session to the next. It's why we talk about 3 times a week. Most people can retain most of the information at that level. When you are finished with sessions, you aren't supposed to need any more neurofeedback training. I have people that I saw 25 years ago, and occasionally I get a Christmas card from them telling them how great life is going. They didn't go backwards. They didn't fall apart. But we also went through a very specific weaning process to make sure that they were able to hold the gains for longer and longer periods of time. And when we do that, they last. Your brain has found a more efficient, let's put that into better terms, a shortcut, an easier, less energy result. You needed to do this. Yeah. You know, I had a gentleman who was in his mid-50s, had lived his whole life, as he remembered, with ADD, and over the last 10 or 15 years with depression. He got up and he went to work every day and had a fairly demanding job. And he explained to me when he came home from work, he was exhausted. He would sit and eat dinner with his wife and then hit the couch and then go to bed. That was his life. That was all he had energy for. He worked all day. He came in one day and said, listen, I know you're trying to explain this stuff to me. I can't pretend to understand it, but something weird is going on. I'm like, oh, do tell. He said, I have arranged for salsa dancing lessons for my wife and I a couple of nights a week. Why can I do that? I'm like, oh, leftovers. You have leftover energy that your brain used to need all day long to just keep you on task at work or keep your mood stabilized. Now your brain has it figured out in a more efficient way and you don't need that anymore. Good. Learn how to dance. That's great. You know, so there's lots of ways of finding evidence of a bit of leftover energy. If your brain hasn't used it all up all day doing the tasks that you have to oh, I have to stay focused. Oh, I have to stay on track. Oh, I have to keep my mood. Oh, I have to do this. Those are very energy depleting kinds of efforts. And if your brain has found a more efficient way to do that, so it didn't have to use up every speck of energy, you benefit. But if it's done properly, these should be lasting results.
And Talabu, just to follow up on what Joy's saying, the devices out there on the market, little headsets, headbands, whatever, it's algorithms. People, some person somewhere has decided this should probably work on people. It may or may not be right for you, but without knowing what your brain does, why would you slap a device on your head that may be running contrary, frankly, to what your professional is doing? Your professionals, put a lot of work, people like Joy and Joshua have put a lot of work into trying to figure out what's going on in their client's brain and design and very specific protocols for your brain. The generic thing that you buy on Amazon for $300, I don't know what it's doing, and you'll never know.
Well, let's even add a little complexity to it. Let's say that thing that's a couple $100 can do exactly what the protocol therapist is doing, but it's a different amplifier with a different sampling rate, with a different feedback timing. You're going to get nauseous going back and forth between the two amplifiers. It's going to make you nauseous, and you're going to wonder why you're getting nauseous.
Yep.
With different timing.
Yeah. Or it's training a different frequency than the one you need.
Yeah.
They've decided what the average frequency is, and it may not be yours.
For our work with epilepsy, we expect over 100 sessions, and we usually recommend that at some point it be transferred over to being done at home, not necessarily totally handed off, because we still have the ability to use like Zoom session to monitor. You can operate the software reset a threshold, actually monitor the session online at a distance. And when you're doing, Isabella took 350 sessions for her intractable epilepsy to be fully resolved, medication-free and seizure-free. And 350 trips back and forth over the Sepulveda Pass down in LA would stop anybody from doing anything. So, you have to end up in a long-term treatment format like that, having some of it done with supervision at a distance. There are companies that focus on the therapist, not just something for somebody to take home and try, but the devices essentially acquired through a therapist. The software is sessions are monitored and run by the therapist. So the Divergence Neuro up in Canada as an example of a company that's oriented towards the therapist, not just selling a device to the patient. There are devices that are flexible enough to have the electrode sites selected custom, filters adjusted custom. So it can be done properly for somebody in a home circumstance, but it's not, this isn't a cheap device that you might find on Amazon or something. There are also expensive devices out there that are general health and wellness devices that don't have to be sold to somebody with a license, and you can buy them or rent them at home. But again, these are devices that have preset programs, and whether you have an effective outcome or not is kind of a crapshoot. So, nothing against the potential use of the device for general health and wellness. If you don't have a complaint and you're interested in consciousness playing, it's your right to play with your brain. But it's also your risk.
Two things I want to get to before we do a close in, I don't know, less than 10 minutes. I would love feedback from the panel that is here now, because we've had more people show up today than last week. We had more people the week before. Who knows? It's the summer. We're figuring this thing out, whatever. What can we do better on the panel? And then the new people that have showed up in chat, thank you for showing up. I think we've done it so far so good, because what happens is, I want to explain it to everybody what's going on. Anthony and myself, we see questions coming in. One of us will put it up there and we'll post it. Like Talibu, who I destroyed his name 1,000,000 times.
Her.
That's a her?
It's a her. Right, Joy? It's a her.
How would I know? How would I know?
No reason you should. No, I'm not trying to embarrass you. It's a her.
No. Well, okay. So that's what I'm here for.
So Talibu sounds like they're expecting to work with somebody for 6 months or so, and then try to extend it longer at home. And he or she has a child with autism, and it does take longer, and especially if there's an epileptogenic discharge. And until you actually get an EEG looked at, you don't know.
Like Jay said, I have 20 cases like that.
Over half of the autism cases actually have discharges in them.
If I have to do 100 sessions with somebody, I don't like to keep them in the clinic for 100 sessions. My relevance to my local community will drop if I can't have new intakes. And so I don't like that idea. So I try to get the equipment in their house once they're properly trained and I feel comfortable with them doing it under some supervision.
Yeah.
But it's the professional equipment that's going with them.
Yeah.
The stuff that they were using in the clinic goes home.
Grace had a question about the vagus nerve. I want to make sure I got it to.
I can read it. How does the vagus nerve interact with neurofeedback? Should people fix their vagus before they do neurofeedback?
Fix the vagus nerve. Let's start with that.
I don't want to dominate all of this. Just press start. I'll talk. the left frontal area that people go to try to deal with affect regulation, when stimulated, actually stimulates the vagus nerve. If you do TMS at that location, you'll see a cardiac deceleration when you pulse it. And the extent of the cardiac deceleration can tell you how strong the pulse needs to be. That was only recently discovered by Martijn Arns working in TMS. He found the cardiac deceleration and the vagal nerve connection. And he was just at Stanford, and they've identified the ability to titrate the dose, the strength of the pulses, basically based on the cardiac deceleration. One of the things that can happen in TMS in a session is you stimulate the brain and the person passes out in the chair. Why would that happen? Well, you can decelerate the heart down to 40 beats a minute. That's not really sufficient for a lot of people. They might pass out. So, it's essentially like a vasovagal syncope. You can pass out from vagal nerve stimulation. And so is it in the brain as well? Of course it is. The vagus nerve connects the brain and the body, and they talk to each other. Whether you know what you're listening to or not is another matter. But intense abdominal pain, it will be a vagal body stimulation. And when that hits the brain, many people pass out. Again, vasovagal syncope, the brain will pass out usually at that point, dropping blood pressure out and cardiac deceleration.
But to her question, though, in other words, should someone postpone neurofeedback training until the vagus nerve is better balanced, or can they be done simultaneously, or are they connected? I mean, my own opinion is do them simultaneously, because why not?
If the therapist knows what they're doing, vagal nerve stimulation can be used in conjunction with neurofeedback. But you do have an effect with the stimulator, or there's some stimulators that are inside the mouth. I mean, there's been a number of different approaches over the years, but the vagal nerve stimulation can end up being done in conjunction with the neurofeedback, assuming the person is competent in both of them. It's like a medical doctor has a license to do a lot of procedures, but they also have to prove they have competence with the procedure. So, just because they have a vagal stimulator, they need to know what they're doing with it. So.
Would that also, would you extend that to, sort of vagal nerve stimulators on the neck, or would you also extend that to heart rate variability as an impact or for a vagus nerve tone? That's what I would go. Again, I don't do vagus nerve stimulation on any level, so we just rely on heart rate variability training to help propel people's vagal tone.
I'm going to say this on the vagus nerve. We talked about it last week. If you can pass out on the toilet, that's something I want to know more about.
You talking about Elvis here, or what are you?
It happens.
Joke.
It happens.
Jay, go to it, and then I will close this out.
It's basically
before we close, I have to know.
Intense body pain.
Is a heretic.
Yeah.
What?
What? She wants to know about the heretic in the room.
It's posted here.
If you stretch the intestines, it causes an intense pain. The intestines are sensed in the insula. The insula and the sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system happen there as well. And you can end up with basically a pain that causes you to pass out. The stimulation is so intense that you just pass out.
Wow. We're going to close on that, Jay. Here's what we're going to do. we do this. We're at 7 o'clock Central, and I'm in God's country, and we can get to politics later, but. John Mekrut, you and I, we could talk about. I like to go to LA and hang out with you guys. But
welcome.
We do Joy Lunt. I'll be out there with you too as well. Yep. I'm equal opportunity basher. But we do a show with Jay Gunkelman and Dr. Marie Swingle, 8 a.m. Pacific time, 10 a.m. Central, where we take whatever we heard here and we talk about it there. We're trying to figure out how people want to get into this. Vagus nerve is very popular, especially when you're going to the bathroom, Jay.
I saw a little clip of somebody who passed out and fell and hit her face, and was fairly famous, and basically had vasovagal syncope. So it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon.
All right, everybody.
Okay.
All right, we gotta go. We gotta go. I gotta eat. We're in God's country. Everybody's looking at me. The grill's burning.
The hot dogs are done.
A lot of carbon. Jay, I'll see you in a few hours. And anybody else that wants to show up, send me a link. We'll clue you in. Hey, bless everybody that showed up, that asked the questions. I think we got something here. This is better than last week. I think we got something rolling. So thank you, everybody.
Spread the word. Spread the word. Tell your friends.
Oh, look at this. Now we got a surge of people.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on in the chat, but something weird's going on with the chat.
I told you, if you pass out going to the bathroom, that's a big one. Wait, hold on. Discuss, baby. Don't go. Here, I'm going to walk away.
Next Wednesday, 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock Pacific.
Another.
All right, guys, we got it. Bye, all.
Pete, thanks
See
so
you
much
tomorrow
for
morning.
your
See you
vacation.
tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning into this special edition of NeuroNoodle Q&A Live. We hope you found the session informative and insightful. Remember, if you'd like to join us for the next live Q&A, we go live every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Time on the NeuroNoodle YouTube channel. It's your chance to ask your questions directly and shape the conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the NeuroNoodle podcast on your favorite platform to stay updated on all things neurofeedback and brain health. And one last reminder, the content provided in this Q&A is for informational entertainment purposes only. Always consult with your primary care physician or a qualified healthcare provider before making any decisions related to your health. Thanks again for listening and watching. We'll catch you in the next episode.